on.
Are you? Oh,
All right. How's everybody doing? I see Mitra. Mitra's on Zoom today. She's not in for Ganita, Aaron, Moni. All right. All right, we got some people in here. All right, so today what I want to do is I'm going to do something a little bit different. We don't have a video. We're not going to go through a book. We're going to go over the three-step system. And what I want to do is we go through this three-step system. I want you guys to ask me questions. So throw some questions in the chat as I go through and see where are you at in this process. Because the process is really key to the success that you want in the real estate industry. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to start. Sandy will be checking the chat randomly as we go through here. So I don't want you guys to hesitate if you have a question. Where are my markers? All right. So the three-step system is based on if you want to make $100,000 in the next 6 to 12 months. And it's 6 to 12 months because I don't know the consistency of your behavior or your work ethic. So depending on those two things, it will really depend on what the time frame is. We have a lot of history of agents getting to 100 grand in 6 to 12 months. And we're going to go through that really quick. So let's start off with step one. Step one has a few components. Step one is mindset. That's the first part. That's the first part of anything that you want to do. If you don't believe you can actually do it, then you're not going to be able to do it. You have to actually have an irrational belief that whatever you want is possible before you can achieve it. So you have to talk to yourself about it. So wherever you're at in that process, if you're not sure, if you're unsure, what I would suggest is whatever works best for you, reading books about mindset, watching YouTube videos about mindset. I am fully under the belief that if you want to educate yourself at a massively high level, that you can do it on YouTube. YouTube is a magical place. So getting to a place in your mind where you believe you can actually achieve 6 figures in the next 12 months. So that is step one. Step two is online presence. So online presence is a handful of different things, but it basically comes down to branding and brand awareness. If I could do one thing for the real estate industry is that I would try to get every agent to realize that they are their own brand and they are their own individual company, and they would need to treat their business like that. Most agents do not. Most agents don't have a logo. Most agents don't have consistency in what they post and how they post things, or in knowing how much they post. It's mostly random. So when it comes to online presence, what I would say is pick your colors, get a logo, and if you're like, where do I do that? How do I do that? You can go to Fiverr, which basically has a plethora of different people doing a whole bunch of different things for you. You can get a logo made for 20 bucks. It's really not difficult. So when it comes to online presence, and branding, you have to think about who are you as a brand. Write down all of the things that you feel that you are. Like, let's say you're smart, you're technical, you're communicative, you're empathetic. Like, write down all the buzzwords and all the things that you feel you are, and then start to tie that in to what you are as a brand. I will say that technical and communicative are 2 buzzwords when it comes to real estate, because communication is one of the things that most real estate agents lack at a very high level. So if you can be more communicative and you can represent that to your clients when you're in front of them, that's going to give you an edge. Technology is gonna be at the forefront of everything moving forward. Like Ryan Serhant, his brand, Serhant, is real estate and media. So that's what he is at his core level, and that's his brand statement. He has a very specific color, he has a very specific logo. And so if you look around at other brands out there, if you model yourself after that, that would be a good way to go. The other thing about online presence is consistency of posting. When it comes to online platforms, it's very, very important that you have a presence on there because your clients are going to search for you, going to look for you. If somebody refers you, the number one thing that most people do is that they're going to search for you online. And there are a handful of agents that just dominate online presence and they're going to stand out. And if they don't get the business, they're going to get a shot at the business because of their online presence. The reason online presence is so valuable is because the number one thing that you need to sell a house and to find a house is exposure. So if you don't have the ability to expose yourself at a high level when it comes to marketing and online presence, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. I hope everybody heard what I just said. When you sit in front of, let's say you sit in front of a $5 million client, they want to sell a $5 million house. You don't have people that can afford $5 million homes just hanging out, running around. You have to go find those people. And exposure is key. It is super, super important to be able to expose somebody's property and somebody's listing at a super high level. If you haven't watched the TV show on Netflix, Owning Manhattan by Ryan Serhant, it's very interesting because it shows you the level of exposure and how important it is because I think it's a 250 million. Did you watch Owning Manhattan, Sandy?
No, that's next.
Oh. He has the most expensive condo penthouse in the world. It's the highest penthouse in the world. I think it's $250 million. And he basically employed his entire team and said that if somebody sells this, they're getting a $10 million commission. Good math, that's the way it works out. And they were literally calling and talking to everybody on the planet. They were talking to international contacts. They were talking to all these people because at the end of the day, to find the person that can actually afford that, it's probably less than 100 people in the world. And so exposure is key, and it's going to be determined based on how easy is it to find you. If it's hard to find you, I'll give an example of that. I had an agent that I knew was a notary, and somebody was like, "Hey, I need a notary." I'm like, "Oh yeah, so and so does a notary." I wouldn't try to find this person online. I couldn't even find him. Couldn't find him on Facebook. Couldn't find him anywhere. So how easy are you to find? And if you're like, "Well, I'm not a fan of social media. I don't like social media," blah blah blah. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. If you're not a fan, the 3 platforms that you should be on, at least at minimum, are Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Now, I will tell you, this is going to change. It is in the process of changing right now. I just haven't said anything about it. Next one is going to be the one that everybody's scared of. What do you think that would say? YouTube. YouTube is going to be the one that I am going to put on there on the list for the simple fact that video is a game changer. Video is the thing that will get you across the know, like, trust path without ever meeting somebody. Because if somebody can see you on a video, they're going to see the cadence of how you talk, your mannerisms, how you are, different things that you do. There's so many different things you can do with video to get people to like you. And if you can do YouTube at a super high level, you're going to get business. We actually have an agent within Keller Williams that gets all his business from YouTube. I'm going to actually play something from him at the next team meeting because I think it's super valuable if everybody could start getting into this. TikTok, stories, there's all these different things that you can do that can expose you at a super high level. But online presence. The third thing in step 1 is your database. I always piggyback between database and online presence on which one's more important. They're equal, but they're different. And the database part, if you coach with me and you want to sit down with me, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is put everybody you know in your database, period. That will be your homework for the next 7 days. And then when we meet again, if you haven't done that, we're not having a meeting until you have everybody in your database. You have to have your people somewhere. If they're not somewhere and they're just in your phone, hanging out in your phone, then they're not really your people yet because you haven't communicated with everybody. The key is to take your people, put them somewhere where you can keep track of them. Think of them as your children. You have to keep track of them. You have to protect them. You have to make sure that they don't wander off, and you have to communicate with them at all times. So you take all of your people, you put them in your database, you get a database from us, and then you put notes in there of all the information you have on those people. The really cool thing about Command is that you have a health score with your database. It tells you how many contacts you have, their name, their phone number, their email address, their address, all of that stuff. So your job is to go through your database and get as much data as possible. Data is king right now. Data is like the new oil. You need as much data on your people as you can possibly find. This is why Gmail is free, because they want your data. If you look at the top 10 companies in the world, they're mostly data companies right now. When in 20 years ago, they were like oil and steel and gas companies and stuff like that. So the data, the more data that you can get is super valuable. So all of your people have to go into your database. This is mucho importante. Did I say that right? Muy. So much for my one semester of Spanish that I took in college. All right, any questions on that? I would say that probably 75% of the office do not have these 3 things in place at a mediocre level. So I think everybody, including myself, can probably do better on this. Step 2. Any questions so far? I'm crushing it right now. Nobody has questions. So good at what I do. All right, step 2. Lead generation. Lead generation. So this is who you talk to and what do you say. So after you get all of your people in your database, you find all of your people in your database on social media, and you like them, follow them, friend them, whatever it is you need to do. You have to call them and have a conversation with them. So you call them, and the specific conversation you have is not about real estate. Nobody wants to talk about real estate. Nobody wants to be sold to. Nobody wants to have a sales conversation with you. Nobody does. This is why when you walk into a store and the salesperson walks up to you and says, "Can I help you?" You say, "I'm just looking." And then what happens is that you're not just looking, you are typically there to buy something. And if you find something, you don't go find the person that asked you if you wanted help. You find the person that has the key so you can try your thing on. So the person, it's the one that's most convenient. So the key is that nobody wants to be sold. So you have to call and talk to your people. And the key is to check in with them to see how are they doing. Because people are going to use you when they know you, like you, and trust you. And if you show that you have a level of care for them, that is going to put the trust factor there very quickly and a lot faster than if you call and ask them if they want to buy or sell a house. So the way you do that is the acronym, it's FORD, Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams. And when you call people, those are the conversations you have. Everybody's going to be a little different. You don't have to follow the acronym specifically. You can just do it randomly, depending on the person. So typically you call somebody and ask them, how's the family? How's the wife? How's the kids? How's everything going? And then you take notes on that and you put the notes in the database. You ask them about their job. Are you still working at JPL? Are you still working at Starbucks? How is that going? Blah, blah, blah. you get into a conversation and you show them that you are interested in that. Recreation, what do you do for fun, dreams, where, is this your forever house or do you plan on retiring somewhere else? Like figure out how to work that conversation in there if they're an empty nester. There's a lot of different ways it can go. There is no structured form to this conversation except for the acronym. So the key is to call them as if they are your best friend and you have a best friend conversation as much as you possibly can. Typically what happens is that the law of reciprocity kicks in, and when you ask them so many questions and talk to them about themselves, they will ask you. And then you get into a back and forth just like you would with a best friend. And then you take all the notes from that conversation, you plug it into your database, and then you follow up with them. Follow up and you follow up and you follow up. The lead generation conversation is really, really super important. Typically, you have about 300 people that you know. The goal is to make that grow. You have to make that grow at a level that you don't have diminishing returns on your database, which means you're going to have attrition to where your database slowly dwindles and goes away if you don't make it grow. So every day when you're out, I think our PC coach told me this, that you have about 27 conversations a day on average. So 27 conversations. So if you're having 27 conversations a day, just normally, how many of those 27 conversations can you add people to your database? Or connect with them in a way to where you follow up with them to add them to your database. You don't have to add them immediately. You meet somebody brand new, add them. You just have to get connected to them in such a way to where you can have another conversation with them later on. You talk to them again, and then slowly you get that information from them. But if you add one person to your database every day, that's over 300 people a year. And now you have a database that can yield you over 6 figures on an annual basis. And then the goal is to just double the 300 every year. And if you do that, in about less than 4 years, you can be making 7 figures. Anybody have questions on the lead generation aspect of it? Does that make sense? No questions yet?
I would say, that's very cool.
And what would you do if you reached out to your title company?
Hey Jerry, there's this area that I'm interested in. Or he will literally send you a list of people that you can reach out to.
Yep. So if you didn't hear Sandy, what she was talking about is that you can reach out to Jerry, our title rep, and you can say, hey, there's this area that I'm thinking about working, and then you can get the information from that area. You can go door knocking. Jerry will go with you. And then that's a fantastic way to get business.
And then someone wants to know if you can repeat the acronym for me.
It's FORD, Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams. So what I like to say is that not everybody's going to be your best friend, but you can be everybody's best friend. And so you would talk to people as if they're your best friend. You call them, hey, how's it going? I haven't talked to you in a long time. Like if somebody has, let's say we all have this person. They're in your phone. You haven't talked to them in years. This is how you fix that. You call them and you said, hey, John, it's Frank. I just saw, I was going through my database and I just saw your name and I realized that you and I haven't spoken in like 2 years. I am really sorry for that. And I just wanted to reconnect with you to see how you're doing. Something like that. Take responsibility. Whenever you haven't talked to somebody or whenever a relationship has not gone the way that it probably should have, if you call them and take responsibility for it, because you don't know why they're not calling you. You can assume, but normally you're wrong when you assume, but you don't know what story that person has in their mind. So when you call them, you take responsibility for the entire thing, even if it's not your fault. Even if it's not your fault. That will bridge that gap. I have seen people mend broken relationships by taking responsibility for the situation and apologizing. That's really important. So FORD is the acronym, Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams. And it's just basically you calling people as if you guys are best friends and having a conversation and reconnecting with people. Take them to coffee, take them to lunch. It's lead generation. Everybody on the planet is a lead. First of all, every house is for sale for the right number. And every conversation is a listing appointment or a buyer appointment. You just have to figure out where are they at in life.
chat.
Yep.
Because in PW command site, I sometimes get new leads with that explanation about the person. I have no idea who they are, et cetera. Do I just call them and ask questions? And if so, what kind of question?
Well, so somebody, if you get a lead, if there's any context to the lead, let's say there's no context to the lead comes through. You basically reach out, say, hey, your name popped up in my database. I wanted to follow up with you. You know, did you have any questions about real estate? Did you have any questions about, you know, whatever? You know, I got your name from my online company and, you know, are you looking for a house? Do you need to buy or sell? Like, if something's coming in, you can ask a direct question about what that was about. And then you just follow up with them. Say, hey, I got the information from my website. I wanted to follow up, to see if I can answer any questions for you. So if they tell you, let's chat on WhatsApp, that's probably not a real lead. And I would probably avoid talking to them and or going to buy gift cards or anything that they ask you to do. That typically happens.
Something else I like that.
Yep.
With title, because Jerry brought this up, you can be so specific, like, from personal experience, when parents got divorced, they immediately needed a real estate agent.
Yep.
You can find a list of people that just got divorced.
Yep.
And reach out to them that way.
Yep, and Jerry can help you with that.
And Jerry can help with that.
So divorce listings, so I think the divorce rate in America is something stupid, like 60%. So there's a lot of them. There's a lot of divorcees out there and a lot of people typically need help when it comes to that. Jerry can help you with that. And I will tell you this, that if they say they have a real estate agent, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to use that real estate agent. I have a personal friend who got divorced and he's like, we're using you. And then I actually hooked him up with his attorney. And then we were friends with the husband and the wife. The wife was like, no, I don't want to use them, which we were completely offended. And she wanted her own attorney. She wanted her own real estate agent. And so what I did is I went to his attorney and I said, why don't we both do it and we'll both split it? And so there was literally 2 agents from different companies on the listing and we basically split the commission. That's a way you can do that. The other person has to be open to it and has to be mutually agreed upon. If your attorney's any good, they can figure it out. But that's a great thing. The thing is that if you want leads, there are tons of leads out there. You just have to know where to look and be willing to hustle to go get them. The other part of the lead generation aspect of it is that going back to nobody wants to be sold. Nobody on the planet wakes up and goes, I'm just gonna sell the house today. Or they don't go like, you know what, Sandy, let's go to lunch and go buy 6 houses. Like, that's not the way it usually works. People will buy and sell based on life events. Like they get married, they get divorced, they have a baby, they get a job, they lose a job. Huh? Kids go to college, empty nester, so many different things. But it's all based on life events. We just sold a $1.175 million property in Saugus where the husband's selling the house and moving to Iowa or Ohio, one of those Ohio states or whatever, because of his kid, because of his son, because that's where they're going to college. He wants to be closer to him. Completely making this massive life change, sold his company, is moving out there for his kids. I'm like, okay, I wouldn't do that for my kids, but hey, to each his own. It's a life event. So your job as a real estate agent is to really talk to all the people that you know and figure out where they at in life. And then to communicate with them so when their life changes, they think of you. Because if you talk to them one time and you don't talk to them for 6 months to a year, why would they use you then? Everybody you know is in somebody else's database and you have no clue how much they're talking to them. So you have to up your level of communication like 10 times more than what you think anybody else is doing. So your job is to figure out where they at in life. And I always tell agents, this is how that conversation goes. You're going to call them, you're going to have the Ford conversation and they're going to be fine. Job is fine, kids are fine, life is fine, everything's perfect. And then you're going to call them and message them and email them and Facebook them and follow up and follow up and follow up. And then what happens in 2 weeks to a year, to 2 weeks to 2 months when things aren't fine, that's when you call them back and you follow up with them and they go, oh, yeah, by the way, this just happened. I cannot tell you how many times we get business because of that. So lead generation is talking to everybody you know, regardless if you think they want to buy or sell. The other trap that everybody falls in is sphere of influence. Everybody thinks they know what a sphere of influence is. Sphere of influence is, this is probably the most important part of this entire thing that I'm doing today. Because I can go on Facebook right now and pick out hundreds and hundreds of agents that do not even have a clue what sphere of influence is. So this is sphere of influence. So you are right here. Your first little sphere of influence, this is your family. Now your family is anywhere between 5 to 10 people on average. There's people like me who have almost none. Everybody on my wife's side, that's it. My entire family passed away, don't keep in contact with them or anything. So most people were like, I don't have a sphere. That's not true. I have my wife's side, but that was like 5 people, to be honest. Then you have your next sphere, which is like, I call your board of directors. This would be like your best friend group, your close friend, best friend group. And this is typically another 5 to 10 people on average. So part of the way I figured this out is that in 2023, 49% of all agents sold 0 to 1 home. That's about 750,000 agents sold less than 1 house. Now, if you do the math, 6% of the people you know are going to buy, sell, or refer business out in the next 12 months. If you take 6% of 20, which is these 2 spheres combined, that's 1.8. There's your 0 to 1 right there for your first 100 people. So most people do not go beyond this. Most people don't go beyond their best friend and their family. And they think that is their sphere of influence. If that's what you think, you would be incorrect. So your next sphere is your network. Your network can be interpreted like in a lot of different ways. Your network is like if you're gonna go buy a truck and you don't know much about trucks, you know that guy John that's a friend of yours that knows about trucks. Like there's a network. I had an agent in the office that was really big in the LGBTQ community in West Hollywood. That's his network. Like, and then I have another guy who's like, he goes to Bible study. That's his network. And you just have to start communicating and interacting in those networks at different levels and start talking to them more. But that is all part of your sphere. Your next one, now this next one can be interchanged with network, but it's your community. It's separate because your community can be your neighborhood. Your community can be social events or different things. So like social events can be part of network as well. Community can be part of whatever. But community can also be where you live, where your friends and your family live, different things you associate yourself with. So this here, the network and the community, you're talking about hundreds of people that can be part of that group right there, hundreds. Then the next one is your audience. This is your online presence. This is what's so valuable about your online presence is that when you post online, you do things on social media and Facebook and Instagram, when you throw things out there, there's people who see your stuff that you don't know. Your job is to post content to pull them closer to you. That is your audience. That happens all the time if you do it enough. Example, the $1.175 million property that Tracy and I just sold, really Tracy sold it, that we just sold, that was somebody that found us online. That's because of all the stuff we posted, all the things we've done. They found us, and I can tell you 5 sales within the last 12 months, 24 months that we sold because of our online presence. And people reached out to us because of the content that we put out and the things that they found when they searched for us. So that's audience. Now, the last one is probably the hardest one. And it's literally where everybody tries to go first. which is strangers. Now, there's nothing wrong with strangers. Cold calling, calling expireds, circle prospecting, door knocking. All of those people are you going up to people who don't know you, you don't know them, and you're trying to hustle to get their business. It's probably the hardest hustle. I got one of my first sales from doing cold calling. I'm good at it. I hate it with the white hot passion of a thousand suns. And I will not do it anymore because I don't have to. But this is where everybody wants to go first. What I would recommend is you start here first. And make sure that you talk to everybody you know in all of these categories that you have here. Your family, your board of directors, your community, your network, talk to everybody. And don't assume that just because they know you're in real estate that they're going to use you. You have to talk to them ad nauseum. I find online, so one of the things I do, I go to Facebook groups and stuff, and I see people that are struggling, and I try to help them out, and I ask them questions, and I try to give them free resources, and I send them videos that I do and all this stuff. And one of the things that I see is that people go, oh, my best friend just used so-and-so. Actually, in Bakersfield, I just jumped into the team meeting, and I talked about, like, who's your best friend, and how often do you talk to them? And one guy was like, yeah, I talk to my best friend about every 6 months. I was like, what? That's weird. Like, I think you need a different best friend. And I said, because if your best friend was gonna buy or sell a house, they would use you. He's like, actually, my best friend didn't use you. I'm like, well, that guy's not your best friend. And the thing is what happens with us as real estate agents is that we misjudge relationships all the time. We will misjudge a relationship thinking it's something that it's not, because we're assuming something on the other end that the other person's not buying into. And that's when you're in a marriage and the relationships break up, when people get mad at you. There's all of these different things that happen because we misjudge relationships. And to say that, well, they know I'm in real estate, why wouldn't they use me? Well, they wouldn't use you because you're not talking to them enough. You either don't talk to them enough, so they don't trust you at the level you think, or they don't know how good you are because you're not posting on social media, you're not talking to them enough. So that's really the key, is you can't misjudge relationships. You have to talk to people ad nauseum more than you are comfortable with. Questions about any of this?
Comment.
I love the comments.
In terms of community, one of my favorite stories is
Mhm.
about how Tracy does a Starbucks swipe.
Yeah.
And how she connected to people there. So I love that.
Yeah, so the funny part is that we'll go to Starbucks and they'll go in the drive-through, they'll go, hi, welcome to Starbucks. This is Madeline. And then she'll go, hi, it's Tracy. I'm like, oh, hey, Tracy. I'm like, seriously? It's crazy. And I remember my son was with us one day and we went in and they were like, hey, Tracy, are you gonna get your da 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 da, and listed the list of drinks that she usually gets. And my son was like, what is that? I'm like, she's a Starbucks celebrity. But she knows her Starbucks so well because she goes there twice a day, sometimes 3 times. And being a good husband, sometimes I'll pop in and like grab her something really quick and surprise her, which makes her happy. Not to all the like, tell your husbands that, guys, or so there's all those parents on here. But she did it so often that she actually got a barista to buy a condo there. And then she put that barista in her database and she followed up, and that barista sold the condo and bought a condo for like $300,000. Over time it appreciated, and then they ended up buying an $800,000 house from her as well. And they went from a barista, and when they bought the $800,000 house, they're now the regional director for Starbucks in the area, in Santa Clarita. So it's like, don't think that just because somebody is a barista or a cashier or something that negates them from real estate. My personal story is that I went into a gas station one time and I saw this lady speaking Spanish to the guy behind the gas station. I've seen this guy at the gas station for like a year. We always say hi to each other. I don't ever talk to him though. And this lady was speaking Spanish to him, and I felt like it was his wife yelling at him because she was like aggressively talking to him in Spanish, and I had no clue what they were saying. And so I see her walk out as I'm putting gas in my car, and then I walk back in, so I'm like, I'm really curious about what that was about, because it felt very aggressive, and I said, I'm just really curious, like, was that lady mad at you, or like, what was going on there? And he's like, oh, no, she's a realtor, and she was trying to get me to sell one of my 5 houses in Palmdale. And my mind literally exploded on the spot, because I would have never even in 1,000 years guessed that a cashier at an Arco gas station would own 5 houses in Palmdale. And that basically showed me what a moron I was, that I was prejudging people based on their position in life. And like, you shouldn't do that. And so everybody, and so this is probably the other part that I think is super valuable, is that 300 people that I talked to you about, 6% of those people are gonna buy, sell, or refer. The important part of that buy, sell, and refer is the refer part, because you're not gonna get 6% of the 300. You're gonna get, part of that is going to be those people referring you to people that they know. So you're trying to create advocates of those 300, so they talk to people you don't know and refer that business back to you. That is part of your sphere of influence. All the people that they know, because it's the only quadratic version of the entire thing, because the buy and sell is the one-to-one, like, I know you, you know me. The quadratic version is that I know you, but you also know 300, that person also knows 300. And if your brand presence is strong enough, it will trickle down to the people that you know, to the people that they know, and so on and so forth. So that is the most important part right there. All right, now let's talk about the last part. I go long, I always lose track of my time. Okay, we're right on track. The last part, the third part. Now, if you just do this and you were like, you were asleep the entire time this in presentation, you just woke up and you just did this by itself, you will get business, 100%. Follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up, follow up. So mostly everybody in your database, you probably talked to or interacted at some point in time in your life. So everything is now a follow-up process. Even if it's been a year, 2 years, when you contact them again, that is part of your follow-up process. So what I did, when I first started in real estate, I got the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, and they talked about a 33 touch program. And so I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. 33 touches, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's over 200,000 Keller Williams agents in the world, and if they all read the book, they would put everybody on the 33 touch program. What I realized, and especially since COVID, 33 touches is not enough. Technology, the internet, and everything moves so fast that you're talking about 2.5 touches a month, which is, it's not enough for people, because they are constantly getting bombarded with marketing and information on a daily basis. So your job is to create relationships, solidify relationships, and follow up with relationships. So the follow-up program works this way. The first contact, you cannot substitute this. If you substitute this with an email and you email your 300 people, that's called spam. Nobody's gonna listen to it. What everybody wants to do and what everybody dreams about doing is that they take this big net into the ocean and they throw the net out into the ocean. It hits the water and pulls back all of this fish. What really happens is that you take this net, you throw it out into the ocean, all the fish run, it hits the ocean, you pull it back and there's nothing there. I think if you can get a 20 to 25% open rate on your emails, you're a rock star. The way to get an open rate on your email is to put something important in the subject line, because people will skim the email, and you probably do this, skim the email to see if it's important and worth reading. You cannot send an email out as your first form of communication with anybody, because that's not going to connect you to them. The number one thing you have to do is call them. Phone call, personal phone call. A personal phone call is so important, because personal phone calls are going to the wayside when it comes to business. And I'll explain it this way. Try to call Facebook. Try to call Google. Try to call anybody that has a major tech platform, it's almost impossible. It's impossible. So the personal contact is something that's super valuable and it's going to mean a lot. And what will happen is you're going to call somebody, you're going to have a conversation with them. Now, after you have that conversation with them, regardless of what that conversation is, everything you do after that is going to have value now. The email, the follow-up email, hey, it was really great talking to you and blah, blah, blah. That's going to have value. The text message you send is going to have value. The Facebook message is going to have value. Because the number one thing is you're following up, you're not always talking about real estate, but they've connected the email and the text message and the letter and the just a note to a person. And that is the most important thing. So the step one of the follow-up program is a phone call. 65 touches a year. The first step is a phone call. Now, as you get to know people and as you connect with people, you're going to find that people will want to communicate in different ways. We had a client that would only communicate through email. Subsequently, the 1.175 person that we just sold, the guy was like, I think he was in his 70s. Super successful guy, only would communicate through text message. Would not talk on the phone. He would send angry text messages when he was mad. And I mean, maybe I was reading them angry, but he would only communicate through text message. He would not communicate through email, and he would not talk on the phone. So everybody is going to communicate in their own way. So the thing is that that does not negate you making the initial phone call. You make the initial phone call, and if you find out that person would only rather communicate through text message, you put that in the notes section with this person. Prefers to communicate in text message, prefers to email, prefers to Facebook, prefers to do this, is best available during this time and this time. You keep copious notes on each person in your database, but you use that as a tool to follow up with them as many times as you possibly can. So there is no hard and fast rule on how to follow up with somebody. It's more so that you do it a lot. Ours is 65 touches. If you did 85 touches, there is nothing wrong with that. Less is not good, more is better. So like you would do a phone call, and then you would follow up with a just a note. A just a note is a note that you send to say, hey, I just wanted to say thank you. I just wanted to just. So anytime you talk to somebody, whether it's you saw them in the grocery store for a second, you talk to them on the phone for a second, you send a just a note, say, hey, it was really great seeing you. Anything, it's just a follow-up program. They're gonna look at it and go, that's nice, and throw it in the trash. But it means something because it reminded them of you and it keeps you top of mind for them. That's really the important part. You have birthdays, home anniversaries. So if there's two people in the house, that's 2 touches. Home anniversary, that's typically 1. It doesn't matter if you've sold them the house or not. The other agent's not doing it. And if you sold the house to somebody else, if you're the seller and somebody else brought the buyer, take that buyer and put them into your database because the statistics show that that buyer is typically abandoned after the transaction. You do newsletters. I do newsletters twice a month. So this is 12 phone calls. You do 1 phone call a month, 1 phone call every month. And you go, well, that seems like a lot, Frank. No. If you follow the old standard of follow-up that coaches used to say is that you talk to your database once a quarter, that would be 4 times a year. I would argue that if you talk to your people 4 times a year, that makes you more of a salesperson and you're trying to be less of a salesperson. Your best friend, you probably talk to your best friend, like people talk to their best friends like every day. How do you talk to your best friend today? Huh?
At least once a week.
Once a week. So once a week. That's standard. the thing is that the more you talk to them, the more they feel that you care and the closer you are to them. So I'm saying the standard should be once a month to check in with people to see how they're doing. So that would be 12 phone calls a month. Adjust a note, another 12. Because every time you talk to them, you're gonna send a just a note saying, hey, it was really great talking to you, blah, 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 whatever you talked about. Birthdays, that is 1. Home anniversaries, that's 1. Newsletters, 2 times a month, that is 24. So what is this? 24 and 24, that is 48. So that's 50. We're at 50 with just these. So how do you get 16 more touches? You literally don't have to do a lot more to have 16 more touches. You can literally do 2 more things once a month, which could be almost anything. Just sold, just listed. I have a list of the 65 touch program that I put together for our team. I can email that out to everybody in the office. I can give that to you, email that out. But that is really the key. You have to over communicate with somebody. Now, I had somebody tell me a Facebook post. So Facebook post does not count as a touch, but what does count is a Facebook message. The Facebook message is one of the most powerful things out there because you actually have a little green light on a person's Facebook that tells you if they're online or not. And then they actually have a way that you'll see if they looked at your post, your thing, they have their little icon that'll drop down to see if they actually opened your message or not. So if they don't respond, you know they're ghosting you. If you're concerned about people not using you because you're contacting them too much, they probably weren't going to use you to begin with. And by aggressively and over communicating with them, you're going to get way more business than you're going to lose. So it's very, very important. If you're hesitant about doing it at this level, you're probably leaving money on the table. And I know this from agents that are doing this at a high level, doing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of sales. Questions? I could talk all day. You have any? So I would look at the process that we talked about here and see where are you at and where can you improve, and try to improve like a little bit every day. Like if you don't have 300 people in your database, how can you add a couple of more people today? How can you add a couple more people tomorrow? And keep adding people slowly and just say, oh my God, I can't think of anybody. Well, sit down and really think. And then go to your close friends, your family members, and say, hey, like if Sandy was my sister, Sandy, I'm trying to add people to my database, so I just can't think of anybody. Who can you think of that I probably haven't thought of, you can help me put in my database? Yes, sir.
I talk to a bus driver every day.
Uh-huh.
And he talks to a lot of bus drivers in his division, and they're getting a raise.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, so a lot of bus drivers are getting like good money now.
Yeah, because they don't want to be quit, because everybody's getting shot at the bus.
So I'm gonna contact him later on today
Absolutely.
and see, oh, hey, how's it going? It's good seeing you here in, Westwood.
Yeah.
And just wanted to know, it's good that people are getting a raise, and it's have you talked to anybody in your division, or how's it going?
Yeah. When you connect big companies like that, one of the things like Tracy did something like this, where she got the Starbucks people together and she did like a little seminar for a handful of Starbucks people, because Starbucks has a retirement program to where you can pull your money out of retirement to use it to buy a house.
Oh, wow.
And nobody knew that.
Oh.
But like community things like bus drivers and so on and so forth, teachers, like those are such good community people that you can do the same thing. And you don't have to get hundreds of people in a room. You can get 5 people in a room. You can get 10 people in a room, and you can have a conversation like that, because you just never know. And then the coup de grace on that whole thing is that if you get 5 people in the room, it's not about if any of those 5 people want to buy or sell. They will refer it out. They might know somebody. So that's a really powerful thing. So.
Also, you said when you first moved to California, you joined a bowling group.
Yeah.
If you go on Eventbrite or Meetup, there's like, there's meetups for like real estate agents, there's
Yeah.
mixers, there's all kinds of stuff. So if you really wanna, you know, open up that network, because I know meeting people is hard and talking to people.
If you took everything away from me and you dropped me into a random city and you were like, go get business. One of the first things I would do is I would go to meetup.com and I find a real estate investor group. I would find multiple real estate investor groups and I would go to all of those meetings and I would just start talking to everybody. Because investor groups are not typically just real estate agents. They are people that are looking to be investors and so on and so forth. I would also pick a hobby of something I like to do, like soccer or darts or something like that. And I would go attend that and try to, on steroids, meet people as quickly as I could possibly meet them. And then I think like that's a great idea. It was just, so one of the things that I was talking to Tracy about, like we are constantly trying to expand our group. And her and I were talking, it's just like we could go to Eventbrite and find out what community events are happening in the area. And then we just go to those. And you're around new people, you're around people you haven't seen before, and then you just, one person a day will double your database and double your income. So Yes.
How would Tracy hold seminars? What would she do?
so she went to the Starbucks manager and she said, hey, I know about this, retirement thing that people have and I've helped other people, blah, blah, blah. I would love to drop off some flyers to see if I can get a handful of people to come over to my house and I can go over how this works and how I've helped other people and how they can probably buy a house with a retirement. Are you okay if I do that? And the manager was like, absolutely, that's a great idea. And so like what happened is we'd go through Starbucks. Every time we went through Starbucks, she'd be like, yeah, I'll have a doping Capano with extra whipped cream in a tall cup. And then she would hand them a flyer through the drive-thru.
Their retirement is probably in like 20 years.
No, so it's a retirement fund. So like, what usually happens is that they'll get a paycheck, a portion of that money will go into their retirement. So typically like somebody's retirement is in like 20, 30, 40 years when they're 65, but because of the way Starbucks has it set up, they can use that money beforehand without being penalized if they buy a house. Nobody knows this. Tracy knows it. Tracy's the only one that knows this. It's pretty amazing.
Also, they can take that money out before they're 65.
Yes, sir. And so like a barista who was literally just making coffee, used the money that they'd saved for a couple of years to buy a $300,000 condo in Santa Clarita about 5 years ago. And then we just kept in contact with them, put them on the touch plan, followed up. And they were like, hey, we're thinking about selling. This is the funny part. They were like, we're thinking about selling and we want to move to this area and this is our price point. We got them pre-qualified. And Tracy had a house in Castaic by where we live. And they were like, I don't want Castaic. Absolutely not Castaic. 100% not interested in Castaic. And then what happened was we would show them all these houses and they were getting beat out. It wasn't a lot for the money. And then Tracy comes up to them. We meet them in a house and she's like, okay, I have one more house to show you. I just want you to follow me. Can you just follow me? And they were like, sure. They said no to Castaic. She got in the car and she drove them to Castaic when they told her that she didn't want to, pulled them up to the house and said, and they got out of the car and they were like, don't say anything, come see the house. They walked into the house, bought the house immediately. Just never, so the thing is that you never know. Your job, if you know that somebody likes something, is get them into the house, no matter what, and get feedback. And the I never want to be in Castaic person is in love with their house right now. It's actually a pretty amazing house. It's like a little bit bigger than ours. It's pretty incredible. So anyway, anybody else before we wrap things up? All right, going once, going twice. All right, guys, thank you so much. Show up on Monday. We're gonna have a good class on Monday. We have a lot of really good things happening. Reach out if you have any questions. And other than that, I hope everybody has a great weekend.